Thanks for stopping by the Junction, where we're trying to make connections between Ardmorites. I'm Ardmore Leader News Director Michael Dean Smith. Joining us in the Junction this week are two members of the Greater Southwest Historical Museum, their director, Wes Hull, and their curator, Cassandra Normile, to talk a little bit about the explosion of 1915, the Mercy Train, and some of the artifacts they have from that very momentous time in Ardmore's history. They're at the museum. So, Wes, Cassandra, thanks for joining us in the Junction this week.
It's our honor to be with you.
So, coming up on Saturday, September 27th, is going to be the 110th anniversary of that big explosion that really kind of set Ardmore on a path that it's on now. So as we talk about it, let's just kind of get an idea of what Ardmore was like back in 1915. So, what would it have been like to walk down the streets of Main Street or Broadway 110 years ago? What kind of businesses, what did Ardmore's industry look like at the time?
Well, they were the early day, since Ardmore was brand new, they brought in things that people needed. They brought in foodstuffs. Also, they brought in equipment they brought in clothing. And they opened these stores, and all brand new, you need a lot of hardware if you're building your businesses, building your homes. Mm-hmm. So they brought that type of equipment in for the early day stores. And once the railroad named Ardmore and it got here and it started developing, the business started developing back and forth. But the problem they had when they went to developing it, it was still Indian territory. Mm-hmm. So the Indians owned all of the land, and they couldn't sell it. They could lease it. So they leased it to the businesses. A lot of it was roughly from $5 to $25 a year for a lease for their home as well as their business.
Okay.
And so it was early days, and most of it was, the early days was wooden structures, basically cottonwood lumber, which is highly combustible. So and they always kept thinking about, what if we have a fire? And you mentioned the 1915, but the Great Fire of 1895 destroyed it. They came back, got everything rebuilt, and then the explosion of the 1915. Mm-hmm. And things started happening before 1915, because in 1913, the Hilton oil field was developed, which contributed immensely to the city of Ardmore. Mm-hmm. And since the oil had been hit, refineries were opening here in Ardmore. And it's those refineries and the Hilton oil field that led to the September the 27th, 1915, major explosion.
Right. So let's talk about that. September 27th, 1915. It was a little after 2 p.m. And from reading stories and reports from the time, people started smelling some vapors here in downtown in Ardmore. So it sounds like the railroad had called somebody from the refinery to come down and investigate.
Yep.
What did that investigation find, and then kind of what prompted the explosion?
Well, the oil fields had gone in, and on September the 26th, train with tank cars came into Ardmore loaded with casing head gasoline. Casing head gasoline was to be held at about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, because if it didn't, it went from a liquid state to a gaseous state. Mm-hmm. And so it pulled in here waiting to go to the refineries on the 26th of September. And on the 27th of September, about 1 p.m., they started smelling fumes. It was reported to the city commission that fumes were there. He notified the railroad, and they started keeping everything. People, no automobiles, no more train engines, and hopefully no smoking anywhere near that. Mm-hmm. And they could smell the fumes about 80 feet from the depot. and they called the refinery, and they sent over an employee, Ira Wood, and he started removing the crown on top of the tank car to get to the pressure relief valve to try to get it stopped. And while he's trying to do that, the fumes started going further and further. And he said, oh my goodness. So he got off the tank car and they began to run. And about 2:35, that's when the major explosion killed Ira Woods. Mm-hmm. And that evening in the Ardmore, they said 9 were killed and several injured. The morning paper said 43 were killed and 450 were injured. Mm. And they're not sure exactly what caused the fire, what sparked it, back and forth. But it could have been old Grandpa sitting up on a street corner somewhere, not being aware of anything happening, and he might have lit his pipe or something of that nature. But the cause of the explosion is still unknown, what created that. But that basically destroyed most of the buildings in downtown Ardmore.
I think a lot of people know the story in the days after the explosion, the Mercy train coming up from Gainesville to bring in doctors, nurses, supplies. And that's actually, though, that original Mercy train, the engine, is down at Depot Park now. It was at the Hardy Murphy Coliseum from the 50s up until just a couple of years ago.
Yes.
When it was moved down here. So that's obviously one good reminder and good artifact from that explosion in 1915. But what about at the museum? What are some of the artifacts that y'all have on display from the 1915 explosion that people can look at today for themselves?
Well, we have a large exhibit from the ashes. That's where Ardmore rose, is from the ashes. And we have in there a lot of photographs of the destroyed buildings that was created by the major explosion, as well as we have the city of Ardmore's first fire engine on display there. And we have all kinds of photographs displayed of the downtown businesses, hotels, businesses, and everything that have been totally destroyed. And we try to have the full history of that. And but the one unique thing about the fire engine, Ardmore's first fire engine, I've been told by employees at the Fireman's Museum in Oklahoma City, there's only about 3 engines like that left in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
And they say the unique part about this one, it's the city of Ardmore's first fire engine, and it is on display in the city of Ardmore. And we have a lot of people look at that. They hear about the major explosion. They still don't know what caused the explosion, but it was much more major than the major explosion Oklahoma had about 80 years later, the Alfred P. Murrah building in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. The thing that's different about Ardmore and Oklahoma City, Ardmore explosion was unintentional. The Oklahoma City Alfred Murrah building, that was intentional, bombing on that one. And but we have on display how you reported a fire, everything of that nature. If a fire started somewhere, they can pull the alarm, notify people that it's out there. And of course, we have on display a revolver that was used as a signal. That was before the days of the cell phones. And they fired that revolver, notifying individuals that there's a problem.
Okay.
We also have wooden kegs of nails that used to be sold by the wooden keg. And we have 3 or 4 that had melted together after the explosion in 1915 that are on display.
I was going to say that was probably one of the things that took me by the most surprise when I was visiting you all yesterday, was seeing that just huge lump of melted nails, and to think that was recovered from that explosion and then put on display. so generations of Ardmorites can remember it. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, someone held on to it for almost 100 years.
So we've only got just about another minute or so left, but as we're looking back at the 1915 explosion, how would you guys recommend to Ardmorites kind of keep this kind of history alive so people, can remember such a monumental moment in Ardmore's history? What are ways that you think people can kind of remember some of this stuff?
Well, by visiting your local museum, first of all. But I think it's just so easy to forget how unique your town is living here your whole life. But just do a little bit of research and you'll find out so much more about Ardmore. Ardmore has a ton of history.
Mm-hmm.
And one other thing where it's displayed back and forth, several years ago, the Ardmore Beautification Council came out to the museum and said, hey, we would like to start painting historical murals on buildings downtown Ardmore. Would you like to join us in that? And I says, yeah, we would like to join you in that. And they says, great. Well, you designed the first mural. And being a farm boy from Love County, growing up slopping hogs and gathering corn and picking cotton, I had a lot of experience at that. So I got to thinking, what did I get myself into? Then I thought about history. And I says, that's what we're going to put on that mural. And Dr. Bob Palmer, the muralist, we have the history. We show 1108 there, and we talk about the Great Fire, and also we have shown the first building that was in what is now the Ardmore city limits, the 700 Ranch House. So we have the history displayed about that building, which is on that mural people can see of that nature. And we like to cover historical aspects, and the one on the old Ardmorite building is history also, because it's about the
the old air base.
Army camp back in 42, which was initially going to be a glider training base, but the need for fixed wing overshadowed rotary, so they were basically trained for B-17s out there. And on the Ardmorite building, we have the history of that. And the other historical aspect we have, the first C-130 that came off production line came to Ardmore Air Force Base. And serial number 023 and across front of the city of Ardmore. And so that's displayed on the Ardmorite building of history. But the fire is displayed there, and of course we got all the displays in the museum as we mentioned.
Well, if you want to check out any of their displays at the museum, the Greater Southwest Historical Museum is open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m., located there on Sunset Drive in Ardmore. Director Wes Hull from the museum and their curator, Cassandra Normile, thank you guys so much for joining us in the Junction this week and sharing some of the history and some of the artifacts you guys have at the museum. Do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's our honor to do it.